I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard NOC Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color. You see me? The Hard NOC Life. Comics, movies, and
Welcome to Hard NOC Life. I'm Keith Chow. I am joined by a very special guest. Once again, it's like every time we talk about The Flash, I have to bring on Swara. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again, man. I am very excited to discuss this.
It's very, very exciting times. This is a movie that's been in development for 30 years. Like a version of The Flash has been in development for 30 years. And here we are. We finally have the movie. So full disclosure, you and I have watched an early cut of the film. There are some things that I think, by the time people are listening to this podcast, they will have seen, for example, a mid and end credit sequence that I don't believe you saw.
I'm so confused about this because I saw it just yesterday at the critic screening. So I presume that's what audiences are going to see. But now
so you had a credit
I'm wondering.
sequence?
I did have a post-credit sequence. Yes.
Oh, so I saw a version that just cut off before the credits. Like we didn't even get credits. It didn't even say directed by Andy Muschietti. It just ended.
Oh, wow.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're going to start with a very non-spoiler review of our thoughts on The Flash. We'll take a break, and then after the break, we can really dig into some of the spoilers. And apparently some shit I haven't even seen, even though I've seen the movie too. So first of all, what were your non-spoilery impressions of a movie that folks like Stephen King and Tom Cruise have said are the greatest movie of all time?
I will just straight up say it's not the greatest movie of all time, but it's a
Tom Cruise is lying to us.
It's a great superhero film overall. I went in with, I was trying to measure my expectations, but I was really excited for Andy Muschietti. He's a great director, directed the It films, and he has an amazing eye for visuals, for cinematography, brings out really great performances from all his various actors. And he really gets it. I really want to see more from him in the superhero space. And I think that, the script, it wasn't perfect, but I think that Christina Hodson and Joby Harold, they did an overall good job. And it was in those moments that really focused on character, this film really shined. And I also have to say, the visuals in this film are absolutely spectacular. Like some of the best live action superheroes I've seen ever. And we're both wearing our Batman t-shirts. We're all both in this from Michael Keaton's Batman, and just old man Batman is everything. I love it so much. Michael Keaton delivered so well. And I have to say, listen, with all our various disclaimers about Ezra Miller, they gave an amazing performance, as both themselves, as both Barry Allen and the other Barry Allen. And also love Sasha Calle as Supergirl. I wish we got more of her. I think that, the trailers really hyped her up more than she was actually in the film. But for what she gave, it was a really great performance. And I would love to see her in other new DCU properties, including Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I think she'd give a fantastic performance in that. And yeah, I overall really enjoyed the film. It wasn't perfect, but yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, one character you didn't mention, and yes, I was totally in this for Michael Keaton. That's the only reason I was so excited for The Flash. I was kind of middling for most of this movie's production history until it was confirmed Michael Keaton was going to be in it. And then it was like, oh my God, it's shot to the top of my to-watch list. But I will say the other Batman in the movie I was pleasantly surprised by, because and Ben Affleck has said this is his favorite time playing Batman in all of the films he's done. And I can see why. I wonder what the Snyderverse fans will think, because it is very different from particularly BVS Batman, but it also feels like the most Batman Ben's ever been. Just the way he's bantering with Alfred and Barry, the action sequence that he goes through, that's the most Batman shit I've ever seen on screen. People will talk about the warehouse
fight. It was so good.
Or whatever, but Batman on a bat cycle chasing bad guys, flying through the air with his cape and his grappling gun, it's what I've always wanted to see, more so than even the Pattinson stuff and the Nolan stuff, right? This is full on, and he's wearing a blue and gray costume.
Right.
That was really cool. And even his scenes as Bruce, you see it in the trailer when he and Barry are talking about, you know, going back in time and you could also destroy like there's a sadness to his Bruce, like, you know, where he says like these scars is what makes us, like such a great Bruce Wayne like speech. I just want to give Ben Affleck his flowers. This is his goodbye.
100%.
And, you know, say what you will about the Snyderverse and, you know, the movies that he's been in as Batman. I've never thought Ben Affleck was a bad choice to be Batman. I always thought the movies he was in didn't live up to his potential. Same thing with Henry Cavill, right? This being his swan song. And I don't think that's a spoiler to say that Ben's not coming back as Batman after this. But it was nice to see. And I just want to give Ben, you know, a shout out for a great Batman, as brief as it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that, you know, I didn't really watch, you know, the Snyderverse was not to my personal taste, so I didn't watch much of Ben Affleck as Batman. I've watched like scenes of him on YouTube and such, but this was really solid. And it had that trademark Bruce Wayne gruffness, but also a heart to it and some humor sparked in there. And it was an overall really good balance. So I'm really glad to hear you say that this was like a really great swan song for him as Batman.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about Batman, that why I've been a fan of the character my entire life. And, you know, folks joke about it all the time. It's like, why would you purport to having like the billionaire who beats up, you know, poor people as your favorite superhero? But it's, you know, the thing about, and there's a funny joke about that in the movie too, where Batman talks about like other ways he could have helped humanity than just dressing up as a bat and punching justice in the face. But he's my favorite character because there's just so many ways that character can be interpreted. And you and I have talked about this. Like, I think there's been an over reliance on the gruff, grim Frank Miller Batman, and they forget that like an Adam West Batman exists, a Kevin Conroy Batman exists, right? Even the George Clooney, Val Kilmer Batman. Like, I feel like in both Batmans we get in this, there's such a great blend of serious and dark, but also light and humorous. And that's what makes Batman such a great character, that it can be all things and not, you know, think about like the Wayne family webcomic, you know, that version of Bruce Wayne and that version of Batman, that's as valid as like, you know, the loner Frank Miller version. And I think we kind of see like a version of Batman as a dad when he's with the Barrys and Kara, you know what I mean? So like, I just like the fact that we got to see the various versions of Batman in this movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that for me, Batman works best when you do lean into, you know, the darkness and gruffness, but still, again, have that heart in there and have, you know, that heart of gold, because Bruce Wayne is someone who loves his fellow man so much. By the way, on that point of like, he could do more to like help the city, I know that the comics have addressed this multiple times. He actually funds many social programs and charities, and like he does a lot for Gotham's infrastructure as well as punch the bad guys.
And to be fair to those critics, it's like, that would be a boring ass comic book. I mean, come on. Like,
right.
who wants to read a Batman comic book where it's like a boardroom and he's figuring out how to like, you know, philanthropy? Like, come on. Like, I know a lot of times it's you know, people being facetious, but you know, like Batman, if Batman would just put his money into like, you know, orphanages, it's like, okay, that's fine off panel. I don't need like 22 pages of Batman in philanthropy meetings. You know what I'm saying?
No, but not in philanthropy meetings, like where he's just meeting with Gotham citizens.
No,
like, I love that sort of thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's a conversation for another podcast. But no, it was great. The Flash is a great Batman film.
Well, let me ask you, as you know, because again, we talked about it. The impetus for our excitement for this movie is that it does round out the Batman trilogy we were robbed of. You know, I mentioned Val Kilmer and George Clooney, but you know, you can say that those are alternate versions of the Burton Bat. I mean, it's fuzzy on like the continuity of those movies, because you know, there's a scene in Batman and Robin where you see the Two-Face and Joker costume. You're like, oh, so is George Clooney supposed to be an extension of Val Kilmer? And of course, you know, Gordon and Alfred are carried over. So, but continuity didn't matter in the 90s, so it's not like that's a big thing. So, you know, we didn't get the third Tim Burton movie. Keaton had signed on originally. I think Robin Williams was in negotiations to play Riddler, and those things fell apart.
Oh my God, I would have loved that.
Yeah. I mean, those things fell apart eventually, and then, you know, they moved Tim Burton off the project, and when Tim Burton left, Keaton left, and you know, the rest is history. So we never got the conclusion of the Burton Keaton Batman trilogy. As that, you know, how do you feel the Flash kind of rounds out the Keaton verse in a sense.
It's interesting. And I say this as having just read the Batman 89 comics like a few months ago, and they're really good and a really fantastic continuation of like Batman Returns. I interpreted this version as another branching off from that timeline. So I didn't see this as like, this is the definitive end of like Burton's Batman. No, this is just like part of this really messed up universe that Barry accidentally created. And it happens to be this version of Batman.
I see.
But this is a version of Batman, you know, where he's alone, where he doesn't have any of his allies. This is something we've seen in media often, like whether that's Dark Knight Returns, whether that's in Batman Beyond, at least initially for Bruce Wayne. It's very realistic. You know, as much as we love Batman, we want him to be happy and have his happy ending because he's done so much to deserve it. He is someone who will so often self-isolate and just feel like he's not done enough and just like be in his depressed hole. And that's another part of why like so many people love this character. They envision themselves like maybe of him having that sort of future because that tracks for Bruce Wayne. And it's like, as Batman fans, we hope that he can break out of it. But the thing is, in this movie, you know, without giving too much away, he does break out of it. He does rise to the call to action. He does become a hero again because like, and again, I don't want to get too into spoilers, but like there's such a great reckoning in this film with his reasoning for why he did what he did as Batman, for his impetus to heroism to try to avenge his parents when like he knows that doing so won't bring them back, but he still feels compelled to, and that maybe it's just enough to do it because it's the right thing to do. And him seeing Barry like do this, it's just so good. I love these character dynamics so much. And it's just, I really think that Andy Muschietti, like he really got to the core of what Batman's drive truly is. And it was spectacular.
I think, you know, one of the praises for this film that's been in the air ever since it released at CinemaCon and the first kind of like initial reactions came out was that it was full of emotion and full of heart. And you can see that, I think, even in the original Super Bowl trailer, right? Like the focus on Barry and his relationship to his mom. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Again, you know, you are our resident Flash TV show expert. So I wanted to, you know, having that just end and this kind of coming in its wake, I wanted to compare and contrast perhaps the way they treat Flashpoint in the movie and the way they treat Flashpoint in the TV series. But you know, the heart and emotion is paramount to the story. I think that does shine through, and not just in the Barry and the family, but even, as you said, with Bruce and Barry. And that you know, and we'll get into spoilers later, but like there's a scene between them at the end that like really got me, you know. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, just like Bruce's realization of why he's a hero, and it's really great. And it reminded me in reverse of like, you know, particularly in the DCEU, there's a special bond between Flash and Batman, and in the Whedon cut of the Justice League movie, which everyone hates, and I understand why. But I will admit there is a sequence between Bruce and Barry when I think it's their first mission underground, and Barry's like, I don't know how to be a hero, and Bruce says, you know, just save one. Like that was a Whedon thing that's not in the Snyder cut, but I really like that. I really like Bruce motivating Barry to be a hero, and we kind of get that in reverse with a different Bruce and Barry, you know what I mean? And it was just really nice to see like their relationship play out. Continue in the non-spoiler territory, because I mean, I will also say that it's really hard to talk about this movie without spoiling it. Like,
yeah,
so much of the cool stuff is like when you're geeking out in the theater, which we'll save for later. And again, I'm hearing that there are things that I didn't see in my screening, so you got a finished version of the movie, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I got an unfinished version, so I'm a little jealous. You mentioned Sasha Calle as Supergirl. I thought she was amazing. You're right. Her screen time is limited, but you can kind of get that sense even from the trailers, because like, I'll also say this about like watching trailers. Brittany and I talk about this all the time. One of the reasons she doesn't do some of the episodes, like you and I have had to podcast, because she's like, I don't want to watch any more trailers. And I totally respect that, because
100%.
I wish I didn't see any trailers for this movie. I don't know if this is spoilery, but like, I feel like if you watch enough trailers, you can piece together how the movie goes.
Yeah, I think that I will have to say, like, as someone who's watched all the trailers, I think it struck a really good balance overall. And, you know, it may appear like things are one way when really like there's another crux of a plot in here that is more compelling than what you initially see.
That's true. Some of the most geek out moments, I was like, I wish I didn't know this 6 months ago, right? Like you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. Like, I knew it was coming, and it still worked. It works totally well in the context of the film.
I cheered at that moment, and when he said, "Yeah, I'm Batman," I
totally, so yeah, exactly. But there's a sense, the fact that you didn't know Steve was going to catch Mjolnir when it happened. I wish I didn't know he was going to say, "Let's get," you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's trivial. It's a minor nitpick, and it's totally my own fault, right? Like, no one's forcing me to watch all of the trailers.
I mean, you run a pop culture website, so you kind of have to.
I guess it's the gift and the curse. But yeah, talk about Sasha Calle, because I thought she was amazing.
Yeah, I think what really struck me was there was such a quiet strength to her performance, and she carried the trauma, the like emotional weight of what Kara Zor-El had been through. I've been a Supergirl fan like all my life, and she just magnificently played the role. And again, I just wish we had more of her. And it's like, it's sort of frustrating because like, I wish we had more of her. I wish there was more I could talk about. And what I could talk about is just spoilers, you know? So it's hard.
Yeah. Well, and we will get to the spoilers. So like, do not fret. And we'll properly warn folks who have not seen the movie when the spoiler section comes, because again, there's just so much I want to geek out about when it comes to some of the things that I didn't expect. To your point, like, you know, there are things that the trailer gives away and there are things that the trailer doesn't give away. One thing that it kind of like, you know, depending on the trailer you see is that, and then people have said this who have seen the movie, it's a lot more humorous than that initial trailer, especially, right? We talked about how that first Super Bowl trailer was very emotional, was very much focused on like Barry and his mother. And you don't realize like there's jokes in this like 30 seconds into the movie. Right. And the humor kind of like stays consistent throughout. I wouldn't say it's overly jokey, but it's definitely funnier than I anticipated. What did you think of the humor?
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. I thought it was steeped in character and like, you know, moments that like geekier fans may know about. And just like, I was like, this isn't exactly funny, but like, when Danny Elfman's score swelled with the Batcave and Batman and everything, I was just grinning ear to ear. This is just like, you know, I complain about like fan service so often, but as a DC fan, I was like, yes, this is everything I could have wanted. And in a way, like that's funny in and of itself, like how easily they're able to tap into our nostalgia and just give us a really great treat that honestly worked. Like what I've said before is like, I don't mind nostalgia bait if it makes sense for the story. And this made sense in a lot of ways. This is a multiverse story. Oh my God. Can I just fucking say this was a million times better than anything Multiverse of Madness did. Like it was just such a flat, like, yeah.
I was going to bring in the Marvel piece of it because, you know, until Across the Spider-Verse, right? Like that is clearly the best multiverse movie ever. But in the live action space, compared to Multiverse of Madness and even No Way Home, like I feel like No Way Home doesn't really like, to me, and this, please put your pitchforks down. To me, the nostalgia does like the only time I really enjoyed the nostalgia was with the Peters. Like I thought Norman and Electro and the Dr. Octopus stuff, like it was fine. Like No Way Home was fine. I'm not saying it's bad. But I was like, I didn't really care until Toby and Andrew showed up, you know?
As someone who is like a No Way Home fan, it does rely very heavily on what came before. It acts sort of as a culmination of those previous Spider-Man movies, whether in the MCU or not. And on its own, unless it's like, you know, really focused on the Peter journey, which like straight up, like I used to be a big fan of the MCU Spider-Man, but the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, oh, no. they're just lost so much of the thing. It says, after seeing Across the Spider-Verse, which by the way is one of the best films of the year, best films ever. It's love The Flash, but like it did not hold a candle to Across the Spider-Verse.
Right.
Across the Spider-Verse is
and we couldn't
fantastic.
expect it to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse together, and plus, the third and Beyond the Spider-Verse. Like,
next level.
It's good. And yeah, there's no way that you can touch. It's kind of like how Mask of the Phantasm is always considered the best Batman movie, so you have to quantify that. But we're talking about live action here, right? So like, yeah, totally get that. But to your point, compared to Multiverse of Madness, at least, which at least had multiverse in the title, and you were like expecting, okay, let's get some madness in the multiverse, and you really, my biggest complaint of Doctor Strange movie was like, it's called the Multiverse of Madness, but we only really see one other universe, and it's kind of a shitty universe. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really get to spend. I mean, I guess that's true here. In essence, you're seeing. Well, okay, getting too much into spoiler territory, but like, you spend the majority of the movie in one universe. You're in the Michael Keaton universe, but like, I don't know. I just felt like compared to Doctor Strange, this is, why did they even make that movie? You know what I mean? It really did nothing.
I'm just so down on the MCU as a whole, honestly. It just, again, Spider-Verse and DC are giving me what my comic book loving heart wants. So
yeah. Well, and that's quite a turn, that the DC universe is, more enjoyable than the Marvel universe at this point.
Oh my God. It's been for a few years now.
Yeah. Before we take a break and dive into like really spoilers, because as you can tell, it's I can't talk about it without like worrying about spoiling. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I did like the new DC Studios introduction video thing. Like they got rid of the what's been like for the last 10 years with the animated, Superman and Wonder Woman DC logo.
I was wondering while watching that if that was something they just did for this movie to show like the various incarnations of DC logo, like i.e. the multiverse. But if that is the new intro, I would love that. It was really great.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's also like, this is the 100th anniversary of Warner Brothers, and I wonder if it's also like an acknowledgement of like the history of Warner Brothers and DC too. So, I mean, is that considered a spoiler? Like, are the title cards?
No, it's the intro. It's fine. It's fine.
So yeah, we want to dig into like really, really, really big deal spoilers. So we're going to take a break and check out the rest of our spoilery recap of The Flash. So Brittany,
yes,
you're a big fan of Paramount Plus, aren't you?
Oh, I am indeed. That is the home of one of my favorite shows, which I know some people, I've talked about it.
Yeah. You're not the demographic.
I know I'm not the demographic, but the show I'm talking about is obviously Yellowstone. If you don't know, I love Yellowstone, and it's literally one of the most like, I'm saying, I know a lot of people like, oh, it seems like it's for like rednecks or something like that. I promise you, the drama is so good. It's just, and if you're a fan of Twilight, there's like an actor from Twilight that's on there.
Well, it's one of the biggest shows in the world.
Yes.
And it's got these like great spinoffs, right? Because isn't 1923 a spinoff of Yellowstone, and 1883? Am I getting those years correct?
No, it's 1923. I'm not there yet on the spinoffs.
But it's got like Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren, like.
Yes.
It's crazy that those are like actors you get for TV shows.
Tim McGraw and Faith Hill are on the 18 one, if you are a country fan, which Tim McGraw is honestly a really great actor. I don't know if you've ever seen Friday Night Lights, but he's a great actor. So they're great. Those are great things to check out. I have to wait for my mom and brother to watch it because we are such a fan of the show. Teen Wolf is also on Paramount Plus, and they released a new movie with Tyler Hoechlin is in it and back. So I'm excited to watch that finally when I get around to it. I know it's been like 2 months now, but it's hard to coordinate our schedules.
Well, the reason we're bringing up Paramount Plus is that if you click on the link in the description to this podcast, you can actually stream Paramount Plus for 1 month for free. We're just excited that we get to share Paramount Plus with all of our listeners. So click on the link that you see in the description and stream Paramount Plus for free for a month. Try it. If you don't like it, you can cancel. But if you love it, if you love Yellowstone, Teen Wolf, Star Trek, all of the Star Treks are on Paramount Plus. Do that, and you'll help us out in the process. All right, we're back, and I've been chomping at the bit to dive into spoilers. So
let's do it.
take off the restrictions. We're going to dig into like the spoileriest shit ever.
Can I just say first? Holy fucking shit. The time travel scenes. Gorgeous. So imaginative. Like, it was visually amazing. Like the orbs, the like various frames of like what Barry had already been through. And, you know, I will say, like, I think something that initially bugged me was like, I was hoping that that flashpoint would have occurred in his initial moment of PTSD of like remembering his mom's death and like going back in time right then there. And then he like deliberated, and that sort of lost some momentum for me with the movie. But like, still, like, you know, it was, I understand now it's through that deliberation of him experimenting and finding like these various like time travel like avenues and the way to do it. It was just fucking incredible, man. Yeah. It was just so good.
So I want to ask you, since you saw a more finished version of the film, and I was assuming, I guess I did see like an early cut, because again, like we didn't even get credit. It didn't even say directed by Andy Muschietti, right? It just, it basically cuts where Barry says, "What? Who the fuck are you?" That's when it cuts.
Oh,
is that when the movie ended for you?
No, because we actually did see. Oh wait, no, but you saw like George Clooney, right?
No, it was George Clooney.
Oh, it was George Clooney. Yes.
Get out of here!
Yeah.
That's
so like
awesome.
A fantastic cameo, but he's obviously not going to be the new Batman.
Yeah.
Like very clearly, he's way too expensive.
So just to set the stage, so like when Barry comes back after he's fixed everything, he comes back and his dad has his court date, and he's exonerated because Barry decided, I'm going to put the cans of tomato higher on the shelf so he can look up at the camera. That will, you know, nothing, for some reason, the butterfly effect doesn't affect anything else in the last 10 years, but you know, whatever. And so he does that. He's exonerated.
Not too big a change.
Yeah, I guess. He's exonerated and he's celebrating, and Bruce, Bruce is on the phone and he's thanking him for his help and everything. And Bruce is like, "Well, I'm right here." And he pulls it, and you see the, you know, Mercedes
the car
pull
come
up.
Yep.
And then you see a foot come out, and then Barry says, "Who the fuck are you?" And then that's when it cuts for us. It just cut there, and we didn't even get credits. So you're saying the next scene is
George Clooney.
George Clooney?
Yes. Yes.
That's so cool.
Do you also want to know the after credit scene?
Yes. I mean, it's not like I'm not gonna go see it again, you know. So
sure. Okay, so the after credit scene is literally just him and Jason Momoa's Aquaman out at night, and Aquaman's drunk, and like he's just telling him about everything that happened. And I will say, and that's basically it. And it was kind of like deflating for me, because I was wondering, oh, are we going to learn more about the new DCU or anything like that? But I am also wondering, did we critics get the actual after credit scene? So I don't know.
Yeah. So is there a mid-credit sequence? Because there's usually like a mid-credits and then an end credits.
Yeah, the only like mid-credits was like, I think like him and George Clooney Batman, and that was it or something.
Oh, so there's more stuff with George Clooney in the middle?
No. Sorry, there's only one scene of George Clooney. I don't think there is a mid-credit. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh. But so because the movie continues until he sees George Clooney, and then it cuts to the credits.
Right. Yeah.
Oh. Does he still say, "Who the fuck are you"?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm learning stuff because again, I didn't see any of that. They kept that secret for the screening I was at. And I think the CinemaCon screening was the same one. And you know, you mentioned the Speed Force stuff. I will also say that, like, I thought, and again, maybe because I had an unfinished version, the CG didn't look that great. But you're saying to you it didn't seem like unfinished.
I mean, I think it may be debatable. It's hard to talk about like this level of detail. I thought it looked great. I thought I was visually enthralled by it. So I'm guessing like I had a more complete product than you did.
Yeah. For sure. Not clearly. I didn't see George fucking Clooney. But so one trigger warning for folks who may be upset about baby endangerment.
That was wild.
That rears its head quite a few times in this movie.
You know, while it was daring, I will give it that. And it was, yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, as someone who personally was not triggered by it, and many others will undoubtedly will be, like, it's just, I thought it was like visually amazing. I thought like it was a really great explanation, a visual exposition of how the Flash's powers work. And I thought that was really great overall.
Oh, and not just the baby rescue sequence, but we find out what happens to baby Kal-El in this universe too, right? Like, that's what really sets Kara off, is learning that Zod murdered Kal-El as a baby in that universe. So let's talk about some of the cameos. So, you know, again, folks who've listened this far into the podcast are not afraid of spoilers, because I warned you already. And if you are upset that we're spoiling the movie, then it's your own fault. That's how you do podcasts, Swara. You just criticize and yell at your listeners. So we'll start in the beginning. And again, we saw 2 different cuts, so maybe, you know, you got even different cameos here, but like Wonder Woman shows up. That was not expected. She's not in any of the marketing. Although I feel like I heard rumors that she was in this sequence. It's funny that, like, you know, we're probably never going to get another Gal Gadot Wonder Woman movie, but like she's in the last 2 DC films.
So it does make me wonder. I don't know if, like, you know, listeners may know I have my own personal feelings about Gal Gadot. And like, I mean,
we're going to talk about folks' you know, unfortunate off-screen stuff. Like Ezra Miller's not the only problematic person in the movie.
Exactly. You know, at least, you know, she's not a criminal. Well, she's more criminal, maybe, but like probably, but like, oh god, sorry, we're getting into very iffy territory. But no, it's like, you know, it was, I have to trying to get outside of that. It, like, she gave a solid performance as Wonder as she could.
And you see Henry. Yes,
you see Henry. Yeah,
he's not in the movie, but you see him.
You see the back of him, right?
Well, in the beginning, when Barry's like, "Why do I?" So basically, that initial action. Is Alfred saying, "Barry, you know, Batman needs you," and he's like, "Why me? You know, we're about Superman." And then you see like Superman. Is he off world, or is he like saving people from a volcano or something? And then he's like, "What about Diana?" And she's like, "She's not responding." And what about Aquaman? It's got nothing to do with the water. And like, you know, like it's really great. Kind of like, it's kind of cool to know the Justice League is like operating, you know, the promise of like there's this team of superheroes. And so Barry's like, "Fine, I'll come help." And then Wonder Woman shows up at the end, and that's when we get that whole, like, basically all the Ben Affleck Batman stuff you see in the trailers is the opening action sequence. And then you don't really see him as Batman. You see Ben Affleck comes back as Bruce later in the film, but you don't see him as Batman anymore. And then you see Henry in some of the time travel stuff, because when Barry's going back in time, I think he travels through the Justice League movie, and you see Henry there. And they do acknowledge, I believe, when he and Batfleck are talking. I mean, this is for the Snyderverse fans, that it canonizes the Snyder cut of Justice League, because in the Whedon cut, Barry doesn't go back in time. Right. When he saves the Russian family, but he doesn't travel in time. It's the Snyder cut that Barry goes back in time to save everybody. That's the Oscar-winning scene. You know, when Barry goes into the Speed Force. So they say that when he tells Bruce, like, I did it again, and he's like, "You mean like when we were in Russia?" Like, so like it kind of canonized. So like, congratulations, Snyder fans. They restored the Snyderverse. But so that's that. Okay, let's dive into the worlds colliding, the real multiverse shit.
That was so cool.
So towards the end of the film, Barry realizes, every time I go back in time and try to fix something, I'm basically making the multiverse implode on itself. And inside the Speed Force, they start to see into other universes. And we get George Reeves Superman, we get Christopher Reeves Superman, and we get to see a CG, I guess, version of Christopher Reeves interacting with a CG version of Helen Slater Supergirl, which was,
love that.
And you get a little bit of Adam West Batman in the distance. I was so busy like geeking out, I might have missed some other stuff.
Same.
But the coolest one, I have to admit, you know, we're revisiting Tim Burton's Batman. I hope Kevin Smith got a writing credit on the movie, because we got to see Nick Cage as Superman fighting a giant spider.
It was great. You know, as someone who, like, when I initially heard this idea, like years and years ago, I was like, "Oh, that would have never worked." It worked. It worked here. So.
And apparently, that wasn't a CGI Nick Cage because there was a variety article. I saw that Andy Muschietti was talking about one of the cameos. I didn't actually read the article until after I saw the movie, so thank God for that. Basically, people were like, "Oh my God, Andy Muschietti just like revealed one of the biggest cameos in the movie," because he talks about I worked with Nick Cage on The Flash, and people are like, "What? You're in a multiverse movie with Nick Cage? He's got to be playing Superman." And so when it happened, I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah,
Nick Cage is finally Superman.
I found it interesting that I will say, for the multiverse sequence, as spectacular as it was a lot more limited than I thought it was going to be. We didn't see Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. We didn't see Christopher Nolan's Batman. We didn't see. I'm trying to think. We didn't see Grant Gustin as the Flash. We didn't see. And
that's the thing that really because when the first world you see is George Reeves' world, and it's all in black and white. Like the world itself is black and white, and you see like a black and white Jay Garrick in the George Reeves world. So it's like
yes.
So my initial thought was, it's the Flashes are the ones that are going to. So we're going to see like a Flash in each of these universes, right?
Right. That would have been great.
That's the only multiverse Flash we see is Jay Garrick, and it's not John Wesley Shipp as Jay Garrick. It's just like a random black and white Jay Garrick. So I was actually surprised. As much as Grant has been denying I thought he was pulling an Andrew Garfield, or at the very least they would give us like a Beast Boy sequence where because Grant didn't even know he was in Titans. Like someone told him like, "What did you think about your cameo in Titans?" He was like, "I was in Titans."
Oh my God.
So at the very least they could have pulled like a clip from the Flash. But no, you don't see any other versions of the Flash except the multiple versions of Barry, which Ezra as Barry, and that was kind of disappointing. It's like, it is at the end of the day a Flash movie. So it would make the most sense that the weird multiverse cameos you get would be a Grant Gustin, a John Wesley Shipp, maybe, Adam Brody, who was supposed to be Flash in the George Miller Justice League movie, or even that long dead CBS pilot of Justice League, or maybe you bring back Kyle Gallner from Smallville who played Bart, something that would tie it more into Flash lore than just a bunch of Superman and Batman cameos.
Right. We mentioned earlier how Multiverse of Madness didn't do so well on the cameo. So the thing is but how this did a lot better. And it's simply because of the strength of these lead performances, namely Michael Keaton's Batman, of having him really at the forefront and being a main part rather than just a cameo. Yeah. So I guess it's just but still, the cameos we got in this were cool. And I think that overall there was a much better balance than what Multiverse of Madness gave us. Because I thought the Illuminati were absolutely stupid and I could do without all of them.
Yeah, we get no sequence like that, where it's
thank God,
a bunch of fan servicey cameos pop up and don't mean anything. So you said you were cool with CG Christopher Reeve.
Yes.
Because I know I have a feeling people may give some Grand Moff Tarkin vibes there and say that was unnecessary.
I really honestly did not get those vibes. I thought they were clearly using old footage and creating something around him. Essentially, it wasn't like the AI Tarkin where they have necessarily a new actor do all this. I could see every single one of those frames being from something previously filmed. And I think that is totally kosher. That's totally good, totally halal version. So it's just I was completely cool. I don't think this was a case of AI being used to, generate an actor. I think it's just repurposing.
What do you call it? Face swap or what is the deep fake? It wasn't a deep fake.
It wasn't a deep fake. Yeah, I definitely don't think it was. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't take my word for it, but that was not the impression I gave. I felt it was tasteful, unlike so many other usages of this type of technology.
Right. It was definitely the biggest holy shit moment. I mean, it was all back to back too. That's what I mean. It was one of the reasons I can't wait to see it again is that I want to pay attention to
all the
cameos. There's a ton of worlds, but you don't really get the focus on it. Only focuses on George Reeves, Christopher Reeve. I even said Adam West isn't focused on, but you hear him and you see the Adam West 66 Batman, but you don't zoom into his world the way you zoom into Nick Cage's world or Christopher Reeve's world. I guess that's it, right? It's only
a few,
because George Reeve's world wasn't even zoomed in on. It was you see it and then Jay Garrick runs by, and that's where I was oh, we're going to see a Flash in every world, and If anything, it would have been cool to see like John Wesley Shipp in his old 90s Flash costume show up, because I mean, he's the closest tie. I mean, whenever you see fan art of the original Justice League, it's Michael Keaton, Batman, Christopher Reeve, Superman, and John Wesley Shipp, Flash, and Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. Yeah, it's finally out. Can't believe it. This movie was like in development hell for 3 decades, and it's finally out.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like another thing I'm pointing about the main plot, it's about Barry like learning to accept, and it is a point of Flashpoint of him learning to accept like the point of inevitability with certain events and like letting go of his mom. I thought that was all really great, and that the ultimate villain or antagonist turned out to ultimately be himself. And that was like a really powerful moment. I will say as well, though, this wasn't, I think a lot of people are also going into this film expecting it to be the transition from the DCEU to the DCU. I don't think that was made very explicitly clear. Obviously they're still figuring things out and like who to cast and stuff like that. And that's not its main focus. It is really just focused on being like a really great adaptation of Flashpoint. It's a unique take on Flashpoint as well. That's something I really appreciated. Gotta say, way better than what they did in the Flash TV show, which was like, it was a very milquetoast Flashpoint in that show, I have to say.
Well, and and some of the restrictions that the TV shows get, not just budget wise, but I'm sure like they wanted to bring in Thomas Wayne as Batman, and they're like, no, you can't have Batman. But I will say too that like comparing it to the maybe not the whole season of Flashpoint, that did suck, but I do like how the TV show handled the murder of Nora better.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Like, one thing, if I did have a critique, it would be 2 critiques of the film. I'm not sure I like that it's just like a random home burglary that.
Yeah, that's Nora. Not Reverse Flash. Yeah,
it's not the Reverse Flash like that. I mean, that's, to me, again, Flashpoint's only like a 10-year-old story, so it's not like classic, iconic Flash story. But like, to not even mention Eobard Thawne, I was a little disappointed in that. To be fair, you never see. Oh, well, I guess no. It's clear that it's just a random home invader, because all they did was change the tomatoes and she's alive. So it's not like Reverse Flash had anything to do with it. So I do like how the TV show handles that night when it's Flash 100%. Versus Reverse Flash,
especially in the finale.
Yeah, especially the first part of the finale. That was such a great. But I'll also say, as much as I love Christina Hodson, and I think the writing, the emotional beats are magnificent, the character beats are magnificent. Not sure I get the time travel logic at the end. Yeah, because like Michael Keaton Bruce Wayne explains like really well how like the multiverse works, and he kind of like
with the spaghetti,
with the spaghetti, he kind of dismisses like the end game time travel logic, which is fine. But at the end, it's almost like so. The big twist at the end is that Keaton and Supergirl die, and they're fixed points. That's a fixed point. Yeah, they can't prevent their deaths, but Barry too can't accept that, so he keeps going back in time to try and save them, and he does that multiple times. But it wasn't clear in the film. But like when the 2 Barrys go back in time, shouldn't there be 4 Barrys at that point? Because it's not like, because it's like Back to the Future. When you go back, your previous self is still there. Because we see that earlier when Barry puts the tomatoes back, he sees himself like stealing the tomatoes. So it's very paradoxical, I get. And this is why time, like you can't overthink time travel in this because movie. you start freaking out. But what I was thinking would have made more sense is that every time Barry comes back into the Speed Force, there are now multiple Barrys. And then like there are just an infinite number of Barrys, and they're all doing like, to me that would, because when then second Barry sacrifices himself and Dark Flash evaporates, that didn't make any sense to me, because it's like grandfather paradox. Just because he kills, it's Back to the Future, but it's not Back to the Future, because it's like the reason people say Back to the Future doesn't exist is that you can't disappear if you never went back in time to begin with. But I don't know. I mean, it's again, you know, you want to try to think about it.
You want to know my advice? Just focus on Batman. just enjoy Batman and Supergirl in this film.
Yeah,
don't
100%. You start thinking about the time travel logic too much, and you just start going, what? Hold on a second, and it's just like, you know, why you put yourself through that? We mentioned Keaton dies. That's something that people were worried about, but I think it was
so good. Death. It was so well done. And for Supergirl too, because like I don't think I mean, my personal point of view, I do not see that in any way as a fridging. That was her fighting for herself, for vengeance for Kal-El. It was like she went down to fight her, as did Batman. And that's how you
it's
would
not
want to
fridging
go
because she's not, it's not like she's the only, her death is the only one, and it's not because her death motivates the hero, right?
Exactly.
And if anything, her death motivates the hero to accept death. And in that world, it's not just Supergirl who dies. Superman's already dead, and Batman dies too. So it's like they're all dying.
All
like,
the heroes,
that world is not meant to exist. Essentially, is what Barry realizes. And you know, one of the best lines in the trailer was, you know, Keaton asks him, why do you want to risk everything to save a world you're not even a part of? And he's like, well, this is the world where my mom lives. And that was such a great line in the trailer, and it works in the movie. But also, like, why I felt Keaton's death was earned is that, like, Barry, when he's dying, Barry's like, I tried to bring you back, and Batman says, you already did. You know, because to your point about like exactly that, like, Bruce had given up and he had just committed himself to be a hermit. And he even said, well, you know, the world doesn't need Batman anymore. Gotham's the safest city in the world, which is wild to think about. But
because of Bruce Wayne's philanthropy.
Because of his philanthropy. And so he doesn't need to, you know, dress up like a bat anymore. But then he realized, but I do need to go out there and if I can help save the world, I can. And that when he said that to Flash at the end, that was such a great scene. It was like one of the best. It definitely was better than Shatner's death in Generations. It was the most reminiscent to me. I can't think of another one where you bring back a classic actor and just to have him die. But if you know, because I was like, oh, please don't kill off Keaton. But I'm glad it played out the way it did, because it worked.
It was a really great send off, and who knows, he could be back again in some sort of way. Yeah,
I mean, I do wonder. Like, I get maybe they shot the George Clooney cameo later, but like, because the original plan was Flash comes out and then Batgirl comes out, and that somehow explains why Keaton is Batgirl's Batman, because J.K. Simmons is still Gordon in that universe. So like,
it's very confusing.
How was Batgirl going to work to begin with? I guess was
yeah.
Because Christina Hodson wrote that one too. So
I know, like, well, you know, Christina Hodson is one of James Gunn's main writers for the new DCU, and I'm just so excited to see what else she does. Christina Hodson. They got to
solve the strike first, and then
give the writers what they deserve.
Hopefully, by the time this podcast comes out, the strike will have been resolved, but who knows?
Probably not, to be honest.
Probably
These
not.
Corporations are very greedy. But
any final thoughts, spoilery or non, on The Flash before we wrap up?
It was just like a really solid film. You know, it's not perfect. You know, not everything works. Sometimes it buckles under the weight of its plot, but overall, really great time at the theater. Made me really happy as a Flash and DC fan. I wish, you know, there was someone different portraying the Flash. But, you know, just giving my honest review, it was really great.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than Ezra themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, like, and I feel like every review for The Flash is going to have the caveat about, like,
I have that disclaimer in my review, yes.
All the terrible things Ezra Miller is accused of. That said, the movie works. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate because there is a danger in separating art from artists and everything like that. But, I mean,
larger conversation.
Yeah, that's the point of this movie. And the thing is, Ezra's really good in it. That's the other thing that's like cognitively dissonant, is that you want to go in and think, well, they're
so good.
They're a terrible person, but they may be a terrible person. They're also a really damn good actor, because at no point did I think it was the same actor playing off one another. Like, you really think it's two different Barrys.
Absolutely.
And one of them is annoying as shit, but they also put a lampshade on that. And it's like, yes, Barry 2 is super annoying.
Exactly. It was so good.
We didn't really get to talk about Kiersey Clemons too much. Like, were you satisfied with the amount of Iris West we get as a huge Wes Allen fan?
You know, I wish we had more, but I thought she did a good job with what she had. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. And that they do get together at the end, or at least it's hinted at that they go on a date. So yeah, if you, any Wes Allen shippers, don't worry.
Exactly.
there is a little bit of Wes Allen. It's not, and maybe, you know, it's not quite Candace and Grant, but you know, good enough, I guess. On your scale of Flash content, compared to like, of course, the last several seasons of the TV show were not the best, but the way Grant embodied the character, the way they approached the character, is this a worthy successor now that the show is over to Flash fandom? I guess
I really think it is, especially as it, while it does retread some ground, it does so with its own unique take. And again, I think it's really well done. I think it's one of the best DCEU films that's come out. And yeah, I think it's a very worthy successor overall.
Yeah. If I were to rank all the DCEU movies, it's definitely Birds of Prey is still my favorite DCEU movie. But
Same.
I think The Flash is definitely number 2. It's better than Wonder Woman, and it's better than, I guess, it's better than the first Shazam. Like those are the top tier DCEU movies to me.
I will put it as like my number 3 or 4. It's in my top 5 at the very
Yeah,
least.
for sure.
Yeah.
Which again, low bar when it comes to the DC live action films, but
they've been really good recently.
But they've,
really good.
I mean, Fury of the Gods is not bad, but I mean, I liked Black Adam. I liked, the last half of the DCEU was much better than the first half of the DCEU.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Birds of Prey is still number 1 for me.
Yes. And the Suicide Squad. Love the
Suicide Squad. That's right. That's another one. I think I like this more than the Suicide Squad though.
Nice.
Because here's the thing, like my thing with DC is particularly like the last several years of DC stuff. Like I never associated DC content with like super adult content. Like DC heroes were always the goofy ones, right? Like compared to Marvel was always like the ones dealing with like drug addiction and alcoholism and like can't pay your mortgage, right? That was like Marvel heroes. DC heroes were like goofy gods who said like, great Caesar's ghost and stuff.
This has some great goofy moments, I have to say.
Yeah, in this one, but somehow over the last several years, like we got an R-rated BVS, you got R-rated, and I love the Suicide Squad, but I can't take my kid to see the Suicide Squad. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the Flash. You can take your kid to see it, and that's what
totally. Yeah,
it's a throwback to like classic superhero movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So final, I know you gave a review for But Why Though. What is your for the Nerds of Color listeners out there? What is your like overall rating?
I gave on my But Why the review, and I'll give it here as well an 8.5 out of 10. That was like a really solid film.
Excellent. Yeah, I can't wait to see it again. I will see it multiple times now that I know what I'm missing.
Look at the steel book.
Oh, for sure. I own every DC 4K Blu-ray in a steel book, so I'm not going to break my streak now, especially if I like. I mean, I bought them for movies I didn't like.
There you go.
That's how much of a DC stan I am. I still own a bunch of movies I actively hate, but I own them because support physical media. I can't trust Max for keeping those, even though I hate the movie.
Absolutely,
I want to have access to it if I need to. To your point, if I run a website, I gotta. It's a business expense.
100%.
Anyway, Swara, thank you for joining us and thank you for reviewing The Flash with us. How can our fine listeners at home find you again and listen to you and your various things you got going on?
Well, thank you for having me again, my friend. I'm on Twitter, very sporadically now at Spider Swars. I am on Instagram at Swarzy_8. I'm using that a lot more recently. I am a freelance writer for But Why Though, Nerds of Color, with New Arab, and other websites. Go check out my work on all of those websites. And I have a podcast on the Nerds of Color Podcast Network, The Middle Geese, where we cover anything and everything in Southwest Asians / Middle Eastern and North Africans, i.e. Swana / Mina Media, and we give our takes on it.
You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealChow, _real_Chow, and on Instagram at RealKeithChow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all platforms, and subscribe to our podcast at hardknockmedia.com, where you can also find the Middle Geeks. Give us a rating and a review if you do. Subscribe to our videos, including the video version of this review on youtube.com/the Nerds of Color. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Nerds of Color. We may introduce some new Patreon benefits, we'll say, in the near future. And until next time.
Fun. So good. I love that score so much. It's iconic. The new Batman films better have it. You know what? I don't care.
I was going to say though, because we mentioned the Justice League Whedon cut earlier, and I didn't like the fact that Danny Elfman recycled the Keaton theme for Affleck's Batman, because That theme
That's
is Keaton's theme. You know what I mean?
True, but also like he's like the iconic Batman. You know what I mean?
I mean, I feel
Like
the same
this-
way about
yeah.
John Williams' Superman theme. Like, I appreciated Hans Zimmer's Superman theme as something different because it embodies this version of Superman. When you try to give,
Fair.
though, I will say, all that said, when Tom Welling first meets Christopher Reeve on
So
Smallville,
good.
and they play Strands of Krypton, but again, he's meeting Christopher Reeve. That's why you can get away with playing the Williams theme on Smallville. Like, I don't want to hear the Williams theme on Superman and Lois. I don't want to hear the Williams theme on like Man of Steel. And again, it didn't work in Justice League when he uses John Williams. I don't know how here's the post-credit sequence for our podcast is Keith ranting about movie scores. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye everyone. Take care.